Hello and welcome to another League of Legends tutorial, and for this special edition we are remaking the very first in-depth guide I made well over a year ago and bringing it up to Season 8 and Season 9 times. Naturally, early game jungling is very important and so much has changed about the game, the meta, and the jungle. Now you might assume this is specifically for junglers, but this video is technically for every role. It concerns the jungle position, but if you want a better understanding of how the early game can be controlled by the jungler, when to expect ganks, and when you can help your jungler, you want to be fully aware of all aspects of the game they have to navigate in order to be successful. Help them, help you, help everyone. Now we will be going over all the things you need to consider in order to have a successful early game in the jungle, but if you want to learn more about something in depth that I've made a detailed guide about, I will use this video as a springboard and put the links in the description for any particular video that I do mention, so if you wish to improve in that particular area, you can have a look at those. The absolute first thing you should be considering in the jungle is your matchup, as well as the laners. You have to have an idea of the enemy jungler's preferred game plan as well as clear path. Do they like to gank level 2? Do they like to do a full clear and ignore scuttle crabs? Do they want to invade you and keep on that pressure? Your response to that is crucial, and depending on how you want to play the early game, you have to understand that approach before you even load in. Being able to dissect matchups comes with experience, but there's also lots of tools available for you to use each game in order to increase your knowledge base and make it easier as you go along. Now once you land in game, identifying where the enemy starts is paramount to your actual first clear, which you should already know and have an idea of depending on your champion and what your goals are. Knowing your champion, your clear speed, and your early game plan is just as important as keeping an eye on the enemy jungler as well as laners. Now before the buffs even spawn, I know most laners won't guide the entrances, but it's important that you do, and if you are really passive or you just want to have a good idea of where the enemy jungler is going to be, you don't quite want to 1v1 them, it's important you know your jungle route and perhaps place a ward so that you can see where the enemy jungler will be pathing in terms of scuttle crab. If you like to go say from red buff to raptors to the opposite side scuttle and you're Evelyn and you're going to get there quickly but you want to avoid any fights in that river, you can put down a ward just by the raptor entrance so you can see if they're coming towards you. The whole idea is to use that ward early to track the enemy jungler. You want to protect yourselves against that level 2 gang, and you want to enable your laners to reach their level 2 or 3 power spikes in their own lanes. So after that first buff is taken, you want to keep an eye on the minimap for which laners are late to show. This indicates a high probability that they did leash on that side of the map. And if you want to be extra sure, have a look at their mana bars, perhaps HP power if they tanked the buff, and any depleted resources will give you confirmation of that. That early ward you might have placed before the buffs even spawn will also give you a heads up as to which scuttle the enemy will do or not do. So this is always an important phase, so let's have a look at your options between levels 1 and 3. After mid-season, you have the introduction of the super scuttle. It takes an extra camp to get that level 3, unless of course you're doing something involving Krugs, and so there's now an increase in junglers going for early pressure with a level 2 gank. So you can keep an eye on things like J4, Xin taking a buff and then ganking mid or bot, and it's important for you to be able to help set up counter ganks, steal their buffs, control the rivers yourself, and be able to do something on the other side of the map should they choose to do a gank at level 2, whether that's counter ganking or simply stealing their buffs. If you do want to steal their buffs, if the Jarvan goes bot lane like in this example, go straight away, don't waste time, take their buff, and if you have time to perhaps take another camp, do so as well. This of course will vary depending on how long they're down there and what their pathing is afterwards. And from here you can have a look, counter jungle more, gank, maybe it's just safer to return to your own side of the map and 3 buff the enemy. Now when talking about aggressive invades, the term lane priority should mean something to you as a jungler as well as a laner, insofar as it concerns which lanes can rotate proactively or first in order to help with those 1v1s and those invades. So for example, you know Talon loves to shove and roam with his mobility, so you're going to have that mid lane advantage available to you when you want to be aggressive. The enemy laner might have a huge mini wave on the tower or have to move the long way around to try and rotate, so you do have that time frame where you can do a 2v1 fight or have an impact. And this is very important when it comes to level 2 scuttle crab fights, or commonly, especially if you want to invade the enemy jungler to have some pressure, maybe you want to first blood at his red buff or something like that. So you need to keep track of which lanes are pushing in your favor before you do something aggressive. In addition, of course, to understanding your own matchup. You don't want to walk into the enemy jungle thinking you're going to steal his red buff and kill him, but maybe they are better than you at 1v1s and you actually end up dying. So consider this when you are looking to steal buffs and get first bloods. If you don't have the lane support because they're being pushed in, then going for an invade, kindred mark, or greed play can end up going very badly, like this. But if you have a laner shoving and you have their support, you can work together and usually get some kind of lead. It's best to make sure that you are in control of the situation when you do invade, so that if you go to burn a flash or something like that, you know how you're going to get out of the invade, assuming your laners don't come and the enemies do, because not all laners have the same attention to detail and to the minimap. And this of course all depends on your rank in terms of what lane is able to recognize these things happening while focusing on their own lane traits and CSing. So that's great for aggressive plays. You know, you counter jungle someone ganking the other side of the map, you counter gank them if they're coming level 2 to gank your mid laner, maybe you're aggressive jungler and you invade with your Rengar or something like that. But what happens if you're the one being invaded and you need to defend against that? And that's where things become quite tricky and much harder. But the best thing to do is give up buffs or camps when you cannot hold your own and your team isn't able to rotate. It's a much more complicated process to go through, and I have done a detailed video on it, but doing your best to get those scuttles and tracking the enemy jungler using CS count will help give you an indication as to his path, presence, and next goals. So rather than contesting them at the buff where you know they probably might invade, like a Shaco or maybe even a Camille and Graves, instead adapt to what's happening on the map. So if someone's trying to steal your buffs, you can simply shift your own early jungle route. Be ready to adapt and react. Should you have good vision or an indication that the enemy has gone, say, from his red on the top to your blue on the top, then don't bother wasting time and resources trying to get over there when you might lose that 1v1 matchup. Instead, go straight over to their side, take their blue, take their gromp, and you can always keep track by looking at the minimap and seeing any sort of vision cues that are given away by the enemy jungler. From here, you actually have a bit of an advantage in that you now control this entire side of the map and you can have unique ganking angles into the bottom lane or to the mid lane. Now remember, if the enemy jungler shows up on the minimap, check their CS, see how much they have. 1 camp equals 4 CS, so if they go from their red to your blue and go through the scuttle, which you see, and they come out the top lane gank with 16 CS, you know he also probably took your grump because that's 4 camps including the scuttle. So you know your wolves will be back up and you can plan around that accordingly. Also, if they gank on the other side of the map and you see a certain amount of CS, that can be an invitation to go in and take the raptors and Krugs for free. Always look to get something back when you get information from the enemy jungler. Don't say, oh, well, you know, that's great, he has 16 CS, and then, you know, go back to base. That's a waste of time and a waste of an opportunity to deny him. So let's use that as a transition point to ganks and vision. Now, naturally, once you're level 3 and 4 and you've done those first couple of camps, maybe you grabbed a scuttle, maybe some of the prior things have happened in terms of invades and counter jungling, you will look to see where you can apply pressure to gank. You want to burn summoners, get your team's advantages. Now, I did do a detailed video on vision a little while back, and being able to utilize the shadows around wards and lanes is absolutely vital to your early pathing and ganking pressure. You want to limit the amount the enemy jungler can track you, so your pressure and counter jungling creates the element of surprise. In essence, paying attention to the minute details of your pathing, enemy ward locations by consistently using your F keys and clicking around the minimap in case any laners start to move. If you see mid start to move upwards, have a look, see if he's placing a ward. It will give you that visual indication so you know to avoid that spot when you come to gank. Creating that element of surprise means you're more likely to have success with your ganks, especially early on. Any summoner spells you burn are free invitations to come back and capitalize on those. As I've said on multiple occasions with ganking, don't come once and leave, repeat and abuse. Track and time those summoner spells in chat, ping them, use multiple angles in the early game to gank, use the enemy jungler's positioning and back timing to take advantage of their off the field time so that you now can eke out advantages without him threatening. Also ensure to use your farm as a reward for pressure. Don't focus on camps and then ganking, because you'll find yourself reacting to the action rather than dictating the pace, which is what you want. You want the enemy jungler to waste time trying to counter gank you, but by the time it happens you've already had the gank and he's just wasted time. You want the enemy to be consistently thinking about where you are and what you're going to do next. And when you do have a successful gank, taking a little bit of CS is okay if you're hard pushing, but I usually trust myself to be able to do more with less, or that I'll gank other lanes and get fed there. Give your laner the best chance to succeed and eradicate your taxation. If you can see they're low and the enemy has TP, help shove the wave to deny them and force out their TP. Then naturally you can come right back and punish the fact that they just TP to lane, and if you kill them again, well, they're definitely well and truly behind. And that simple double gank repeat over a few minutes can really help snowball that lane, and then you can focus on other parts of the map. And it's worth noting, if you have a gank, maybe your laner dies and you're counter ganking, whatever the situation may be, if the enemy laner is hard pushing a wave into your tower, don't hard clear it and then shove the wave in a negative wave for your laner. Freeze it. That means last hit them as much as you can to get that CS, let the wave stack and be in a good position for when your laner returns, and maybe he can save that TP and have that advantage for a team fight around the dragon or something like that. Now, if you're using these vision tricks, you're using smart pathing, you're ganking often, you're farming on the way out, you're putting pink wards down, you're using no flashes, no TPs and things like that, you will be deep within the laner's consciousness. You want them to be thinking about you all the time, tilting the enemy jungler because he just cannot react or rotate fast enough to do what you're doing, and the addition of all that pressure that keeps going on in these first 10 minutes of the game is usually going to put your team in a great position. And remember, if laners are feeding, if they're having a rough time, play around that. It's not going to be a case of everyone's neutral waiting for you to come. Sometimes you might be invaded, you'll be behind, and then you need to go and rotate down and grab some ganks and kills of your own in order to catch up. And always look to pressure a bit more than you think you could. If you get a double kill in the bot lane and you see the enemy enemy jungler top, go take his Krugs. Or, on the note of counter jungling, sometimes you'll have a more farm-oriented jungler who needs a bit of time to reach a viable spike and doesn't have the best ganks. Maybe your laners are all winning, maybe they have 0 CC so ganking's hard. It's important to make this distinction before the game and as part of your matchup scouting I mentioned at the start of the video. Kayn players, for example, love to be able to counter jungle because of how fast you can be in and out of the enemy jungle's area, and as mentioned during the beginning of this video, having that information of what the enemy jungler's route is and where they're going early really gives you that advantage in terms of counter jungling. Blindly invading to take camps only works if you have lane priority and can survive that initial skirmish, but it's more likely that the enemy jungle will go take a dragon, maybe gank on another side of the map, and your laners are dead, so there isn't much you can do about it. What you can do is take something back a little bit by clearing his camps and getting that XP and gold advantage over him if he didn't have too much of a lead already. The key is simply not to waste opportunities and punishing the enemy even in the smallest of ways. You get that XP advantage and you deny them that side of the map in terms of farm. And this can aid in your tracking of the enemy jungler as you can leave down vision and set traps for them once they do show up on your map. And if you aren't being a proactive jungler or you're not as much of an early game jungler, then counter ganking, counter jungling and reacting to that action is vital. Don't watch and complain that your whole team is feeding if you're not doing anything to get an advantage of your own. If he's going to hard gank early and often to try and get that lead, set vision, set traps, track him, steal his camps, be there to counter gank and assist if necessary. Don't just farm your own jungle and complain that he's ganking. You are in control of that. You are in control of yourself. So that leads us nicely into reacting to action in order to secure dragons and towers. Naturally, that's actually the point of the game, but you can also be the one to dictate these plays. Please be aware though, if you are watching this in Season 9 for example, the towers will be significantly reinforced and harder to take, so your consistent pressure will be even more vital. Nonetheless, using your counter jungling your regular ganking position a little bit farther into the early game will easily net you first tower gold if the waves are in an opportune position. This is even more viable if the enemy jungler spotted elsewhere on the map and perhaps conducting a gank in another lane. Yes, if you're Warwick or some equivalent jungler, you can solo those early fight dragons level 3 or whatever, but be careful of lane priority if you do decide to make that play. If making a move for that first tower gold is on the cards and you want to tower dive, please pay attention to the minion waves. You know that it's actually pushing and not somewhere down the middle of the lane. What spells are up? Does your team have ultimates, flashes? What are the mobilities of the enemy champions you're diving? And naturally being aware of tower aggro and juggling that efficiently. You don't want to waltz in when your team is low, have no wave backup, and just give the enemy team free kills. Now, as your team will look to rotate after taking that first tower and apply objective pressure elsewhere, this will transition the game from early to mid, and you have to be wary of Herald and Drake pressure. So if you take the first tower on the bottom side, it's a great opportunity to fall back and take a crucial dragon while the enemy bot is perhaps dead and the enemy jungler is elsewhere. And then of course you can go back to base before rotating around to maximize your objectives. So if the enemy jungler shows up on the map somewhere, perhaps the enemy bot lane has gone back after a trade and you're fresh there, you can direct your team to come and take a dragon even without the tower being down. So using your positioning and jungle tracking as well as watching the lanes and when they go back can net you free dragons quite often. Just be careful not to force early dragons and towers when the position of lanes and everyone else isn't in an optimal position, because forcing this stuff can lead to counter pushes, counter towers, and losing your own camps and really snowball a game against you. You want to transition your early game pathing, ganking, and positioning into objective pressure in the smoothest way possible, and that is what will help you win those tight games. Okay, so this is a very finely detailed overview on all the little things you should be considering as a jungler in the early game phase, and of course there aren't specific examples for every one of those, but there are links to tutorials I've made in depth on each of these topics in the description. So if you want to learn one of these things more in depth, yes, even tower diving, please watch those and hopefully those can help you out. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this gives new players a lot of new information to consider and gives more experienced players a conduit to more in-depth topics you can use to climb and win in Season 8 and also set you up for success in Season 9. Please like, comment, and share if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more League of Legends videos coming soon. Consider joining and becoming a member on YouTube to support the channel and have a direct say in the content you want to see, including which champions show up. Join the Discord to talk all things League of Legends, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.